Good morning. Happy Saturday. Welcome to Hope and the Truth. I'm your host, Lance Parvin. Two premises of the show, as always. Number one, to renew hope, let people know what's going on in the community and the world, and to strengthen our faith in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Today, I have the lovely Beth Schwartz, Editor-in-Chief of Elevate Nevada. Thank you for coming in.
Of course.
How are you? Let's talk about this amazing magazine. First of all, what is it?
Well, Elevate is a medicinal cannabis magazine, and it's basically we put it together. Our mission is to promote awareness and educate people about cannabis, and it's all the healing benefits of the plant.
Now, when did Elevate Nevada, I'm a big fan of this magazine, I've read it a lot. When did the magazine actually start? What kind of brought this to fruition?
It came about April 2015 was our first issue, so we're like a year and a half in, and we just decided that there was not a magazine out there that covered the medicinal aspects of cannabis. So, you know, there was High Times and Dope and plenty of recreational titles, but we felt like the whole component that was missing was the fact that there's a ton of, medicinal benefits to cannabis, and we wanted to showcase them every month.
And I'm glad that you actually kind of took the forefront to do this because, a lot of people, there's so much misinformation. They're used to reading High Times. There's nothing wrong with these magazines.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
It's pushing a rec form of this, and so people really are under the wrong assumption of what this does. I still, when I consult for people, they'll come in and they go, well, I heard this and I heard this, and even the magazines and the press, kind of there's a weird kind of spin on things, so people don't know what's truth, what's false, what's misdirection. And this really was one of the first magazines that I've seen that kind of gives both perspectives. You'll talk about a little bit of the rec, but you're mainly focusing on the medicinal use, and I think it's opening more people's eyes. I know we've seen a lot of people consulting for them that have read this, and it's changed their outlook on the benefits of cannabis are, which is that's a huge thing to change someone's mind after, a century of being told what something does and it's completely incorrect.
Exactly.
Why cannabis? You personally, why cannabis? Why this topic?
It's interesting, when they approached me about becoming the editor of Elevate, I didn't know that much about cannabis.
Okay.
In fact, when they said they were launching the magazine on 420, I've been publishing for, over a decade, and I thought that was kind of ridiculous that you would launch a magazine mid-month. And I said that, and they go, but it's 420. And I said, well, is that supposed to mean something? I don't know what 420 is. And they're like, that's our holiday. And I was like, oh God, we have a holiday? This medicine has a holiday? It's not like I go out and celebrate when Zyrtec was, came about, or Tylenol. So yeah, I was like a little horrified, and I thought, wow, we've really got some work to do to make this a legitimate, serious medicine.
Yes.
And make people understand that it helps with Alzheimer's. We just did in July, we did a whole issue on autism, because it's been huge for the autism community. For those children, their brains are basically on fire, and so think what cannabis would do, to help if your brain was on fire, calm you down. Yeah, so it's just been an amazing journey for me to see all of the myriad ways cannabis can help, from PTSD to the football players with the concussions. This could save the NFL. With all the concussions issues, it's a neuroprotectant. So it's been like this ongoing journey for me. Like, it seems like every time I turn around, I'm like, well, of course cannabis can cure that, or of course cannabis can help with that situation. So that's been like really amazing.
Yeah. Now, Beth and I have spoken before about cannabis. It's not our first time speaking on this topic, and a lot of the things that people have been kind of told and shown, we kind of just threw out of the boat. Number one, when people understand what this is working on, cannabis doesn't get into your system and the plant starts going through it. What it's stimulating is your endocannabinoid system. And the endocannabinoid system, which they're like, what's that? This was discovered on record 35 years ago. Your endocannabinoid system, we have receptors in our brain, we have receptors in our immune system. It's physiologically tied to cells in our body. And this should surprise people, because people will say, well, it's effective on a disorder. And as we've seen, it's effective on everything, because we don't know that much. Your body knows a lot more. And so what it's doing is the body's way of creating homeostasis, and the system is doing that. So like you said, with Alzheimer's, with autism, whatever the cause of this are, that's kind of up for discussion, but we've seen neurogenesis, we've seen neuropathway development. I've sent you some people to talk with that we've consulted for, and when you hear their results, it's nothing short of a miracle. It's miraculous.
Truly, it truly is.
What's one story that really stands out in your mind that you heard and you're like, are you telling me the truth? Is this real?
I think anytime I talk to the parents with epileptic children, I'm in total shock how they can go from, so many seizures in a week to, like one or two. And that's at least we did that story in June of 2015, so it was only my second issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I was like, oh my God. And I think that's why that's probably not a shocking story, but to me it was, because it's when my eyes were open and I was like, oh, this is a much more important plant than we're giving credit. I mean, to think how it's helping all those children with epilepsy.
And I think that's a huge thing, that as many people who think that Edward knows about it, there's still people that have no idea. They have no idea the range.
It's true.
A lot of people still think, well, it's just for cancer and it can help with appetite, because even the medical community is saying, well, it's helping stimulate appetite. In reality, people can always look at the Virginia study, it's a favorite of mine, 1974, which shows cannabis's effectiveness on tumors. It shows cell regeneration. What we've seen is neurogenesis, neural pathway development, cell regeneration, things that are supposedly impossible. And so when you take some of these diseases, especially with children, that's one of the things that stands out when people want to say, well, I have a thing. It's like, go talk to a child that has leukemia, that's having epileptic fits every day. And for a child to go from 300 seizures a day, like you said, to one, from one dose. Exactly. And here's where I like to clarify stuff for people, just from my experience, is that people confuse hemp oil, cannabis oil, cannabis. It's not necessarily the same thing. Hemp has very low registering THC. THC and CBD are the receptors that we have that we know that respond to this. CB1 is in your brain, and CB2 is in your immune system. So THC and CBD come from the plant and are necessary. I know a lot of people say, well, I don't want to get high. Well, that's why dosage plays a huge part in this. But THC is the main anti-inflammatory. It's the main anti-pain. It's the main anti-carcinogen. It also helps with neurogenesis in the brain. So a lot of times when children, whether it's Charlotte's Web, and to me, branding, I don't care about names.
Exactly.
The plant was put here by God. That's why it works. And so when you start using it, you're saying, well, wait a minute, these are all kind of marketing things. But if you had access to the plant and it worked, you'd say, I don't care what the strain is. It's helping my child. It's helping myself.
Exactly.
Where do you see the future of it going? I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and we're in Nevada.
Well, I think, and this is probably way out in the future, but I really think there will come a point where we'll all be taking a CBD tablet every day like a multivitamin. I feel for sure that will be happening because we've got to regulate our endocannabinoid system and, stop from these different illnesses and deficiencies when our endocannabinoid system starts to, become unregulated. And so I really feel like that, I know that's way out there, but I really think that will become a thing.
I think it's closer than you think.
Do you?
Yes. You've seen stuff now where they're saying that a lot of these disorders are from endocannabinoid deficiencies.
Right.
And so it's kind of a weird thing for people because it goes, well, wait a minute. For a long time you said this was unhealthy for us. Now you're saying it works. So how does the regulation go? How can we necessarily trust who's regulating this if you were giving us, let's say it's misinformation? Because how so quickly can it go from not working to working? And then you understand dosage and we don't. So I think this is something where people need information so they can make decisions.
But I think that the hiccup is people don't know what CBD is. I don't know. Everybody knows THC. Everybody knows that. So when I mention, well, what about the CBD part of the plant to people? They're, blank look, they have no idea. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing, is trying to make people understand that there's a CBD healing part of the plant and that we all should be taking that on a daily basis.
No, and I agree. That was pushed for a long time, just the psychoactive component of the plant.
I know.
And to just go, all I know is THC. And it's like, well, you have receptors for both, not just one. And so as this information starts to come out, I always invite people, please do your research. Don't do more research on your car than your body. And you can start to see these things. And as this information gets out there with stories, it's no longer hearsay. We talk all the time. How many stories have you heard, not just from the magazine, but in general, thousands. At this point, there's thousands across the world of people that are saying, well, wait a minute, this plant does this plant does this.
Exactly.
And has such healing properties. Now, I know myself, I'm a medical patient. I've seen firsthand a lot of the quality benefits from this. And so I speak from experience. It's not a thing of like, well, I heard this on MSNBC or any news source for that matter, of what it's going to do. But I think one of the things that has to be changed and kind of specified is dosing.
Yes, I agree with you 100% on that.
With some of the articles that you've run, what do you think is the problem currently with how people recommend it, or dosing, or no information at all on either?
Well, I don't think there's a source people can go to where they can get that information. Physicians don't want to touch it. Because they don't know enough about it, which I appreciate that they wouldn't want to touch it since they don't know. But it's hard to find. Like when I first started the magazine, trying to find a source to talk to about this stuff was really, really hard.
Really?
Oh yeah, to find an expert, and then of course I found you, and so that was very, very helpful. But in continuing to do articles for the magazine, I look for sources, and it is really hard to find sources with a medical background to help me write these stories and give me the expert background I need.
Do you find now that more doctors are at least a little more open-minded
Yes.
to it? They're a little...
Even though we've only been just doing this magazine a year and a half, I can totally start to see a shift, which I'm surprised by that I'm seeing it. But I have found several doctors now that I've been able to contact and ask questions about. There's one up in Reno, and he's amazing. He's been treating patients with cannabis since 2000, since they passed it in Nevada. And so here's a guy with 16 years experience. I mean, he's like a unicorn. I mean,
That is. It's rare. It's definitely rare.
I was so excited to find him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he really knows his stuff. But he's not just into, he's a forward thinker. I mean, not just cannabis, but immunotherapy and all the different, he's so progressive. But it's so rare to find a physician,
that's
who's
forward thinking and open-minded. And I think that's one of the problems is most people, you see these extremes with, you have the pothead mentality where someone's like, how am I going to take that seriously? And then you have the other far where it doesn't work at all. And there has to be a happy medium where you can talk to someone and go, okay, this person has, intelligence.
Right.
They have an idea of what this is doing. They're not focusing on just a recreational use. And they're not saying, let's just go get high. And I think that's the problem that people, where is that source? Where can people find these people? And that's my little nudge to the medical community is people are turning to you for expert advice. I understand your curriculum doesn't cover anything that is natural.
Right.
But let's start telling the truth. If you're finding studies, whether it goes against supposedly what they're telling you, you got into this business to help people. So if 5,000 things come out where it's slowing down epilepsy with no invasive side effects, let's start telling them. Right. My thing is, I understand it will hiccup with their medical license. That I get firsthand.
Yeah.
But you can always say, look into this.
Right.
And I know in this state, certain doctors are they take a step back on signing off of medical cards. And I always like to specify what that means. Because a medical marijuana license is not telling you the doctor says, go use it. It's saying you have a condition this can benefit from.
Right.
Have you done any articles on that in regards to MMJ licenses or the actual process for that or things like this? Because I know.
Yeah, when we first started the magazine, we did that.
Okay.
Yeah. But now, the state's really streamlined the cards.
Yes.
The process of getting your card, you don't have to go to the DMV anymore. So that's huge because, nobody enjoys going to the DMV. so they fixed that, and they also have it all online now.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't even know.
Yeah. So they have it all online. So they've made it, much easier than when they started a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And I think we'll continue to see them figure out how to streamline this and make it easier for the patients. Because, that's what it's all about. It's like, how fast can we get the medicine to these patients, especially the ailing ones who are, in late stages of cancer.
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely need the relief of cannabis, for the pain and to be able to sleep and just to feel a little better when they wake up.
I couldn't agree more with you. My next question is, what is your goal for the magazine? Let's say in a year, I know that. But what future goals do you have for this in regards to getting information out there or kind of dispelling myths? Your personal goals?
I just think it's just really important to me that we could just continue to educate the community about, cannabis and its healing properties. And I would love to see actually the magazine branch out into other states, other medical marijuana states.
Now,
I think that's important.
Where can people find this magazine, number one?
Okay, so we're distributed at Smith's Grocery. So you can find it at Smith's. And of course, if that's challenging, you can also online. Every single digital edition for the last year and a half is online at elevatenv.com.
Yes, I check there all the time because people are like, I don't get it in my state. How can I see the magazine? I always have the electronic site.
Right, and you can subscribe. There's actually at the top of the site, there's a little button, a subscribe button. So you can actually, if you are out of state, subscribe, and it will be sent to you.
Okay. We're going to be right back. Would you stay with me?
Of
we
course.
do a little section where we might go over some news you might not have heard about. We're going to be right back with Beth Schwartz. See you in a minute. Welcome back to Hope and the Truth. This is a fun section I like to call News You Might Not Have Heard About. So I'm a little strange. I find stories sometimes, and if you don't mind, if you'll come with me off the tracks a little bit, I'd like to tell you the story. This was published in the New York Times January 15th of this year, 2016. It wasn't in the news for very long. I dug a little deeper and found some more stuff. So I just like to inform people. The Portuguese drug manufacturer Bial, B-I-A-L, I'm making fun, that's their name, did a phase 1 clinical trial by biotrial out of northwest France. Okay, the drug they were testing is known as Compound 362, also BIA 10-2474. This was done on patients between the ages of 28 and 49. The trial started July 7th of 2015, there we go, on 6 non-placebo subjects. Now here's the interesting part, and I was actually right with that, 2015. After they did this trial, and I'm going to tell you what this trial was for, 6 of these 6 that they tested this on were hospitalized. 1 became brain dead, 3 had brain damage.
Oh my God.
Now, I'll tell you what this drug is meant to do. It's meant to have an effect on your endocannabinoid system. I find this strange. More specifically, it acts as an inhibitor of the fatty acid amide hydrolase. I'll just put this in English. FAAH increases levels of your neurotransmitter anandamide and other neurotransmitters, which relieve pain, affect concentration, sleep. Now, I found this interesting for a few different reasons because it wasn't out for that long. Number one, we always know pharmaceutical companies are finding ways to, let's say, make the body work better. But a lot of times it's manipulating systems so they don't work. And this way, because as most people that are taking pharmaceuticals know, it's a continued product. They don't stop. This drug specifically was developed and designed, and I don't think it's come to market, to regulate that system. And this is the hubris to me of man, is when we try to regulate systems that we didn't create, and we think we know how that's going to kind of work over. So some opinions on what you think of a company, and this was a French, it's a company out of South America. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. It's Portugal, but the test was done out of France. They used a second company to do the clinical. But as people are starting to learn about cannabis, and then you find out a company's doing things to manipulate a system, that kind of makes you think a little bit.
Well, I do. I'm sort of incredulous that people died from this stuff.
Well, they didn't die. They had brain damage, and depending on the article you read, some will say they went home. The New York Times said you got brain dead. So that's not going. You're not going home if you have brain dead and severe irreversible brain injuries.
Right. So I'm wondering who would agree to that, and what they thought. Now, I'd love to know how they were promoting it to them, as what. Yes. I would love to hear the sales pitch on that. I mean,
yeah,
that had to be fascinating.
With phase 1 drug trials, normally the French government investigated this, and they said, well, how much money were they paid? Were they told? But I mean, is anyone ever told what drugs are supposed to do, the interaction? Because genetically, we're all different. We're like snowflakes. So when you take something, it's going to have a different effect on you than it's going to have on me, which is why any drug you take has a myriad of side effects. They can't necessarily say, you're going to have this. That's why there's so many different far-reaching things. Yeah. What troubles me about this is the fact that you're specifically aiming something. And they released this. I'll tell you what they said the drug was going to do. Help Parkinson's, help pain.
Oh, okay.
But
so
you were trying to do this by manipulating the system that already helps that. So it's almost like you're regulating a system regulates this by manipulating it. And so that's kind of a side effect. So that troubled me how this comes out, where there's been an experimentation on a system people are just learning about now.
Right.
Plants are beneficial to it, and already you see certain companies trying to take advantage. And this is what worries me necessarily with, let's say, a pharmaceutical company releasing a pill. I know in the 1990s they released Marinol. Marinol is a synthetic version of marijuana, pretty much without the THC. If anything, synthetic is different. It's not the same thing. It's not going to have the same reaction in your body. Your body's not going to process it the same way. Your liver and your kidneys are going to be like, what's going on? I also bring this up because maybe you've seen news stories now. It's becoming big as spice.
Right.
K2. This is referred to as synthetic marijuana, or the street drug. This is even more troubling because you see recently in New York, a homeless population got access to it. It's $1. Like they're selling this, and oh yeah, it's cheap, but it's advanced chemistry. This is not something you make in your bathtub and you're like, look, I made this. So that again are these things you're talking about, advanced chemical compounds that are being released that are manipulating and playing off of the same system. My fear is that people hear these stories and then they equate it to actual cannabis.
Right, exactly. Rather than understanding that, yeah, it's a man-made, yeah.
Yeah, and this is what we want to stay away from, which is why I love what you do, because you're getting out the truth. You're giving information on stuff, and people that, you don't know if you're lied to. If you're getting one side of a story, you're saying, okay, that's what I know, until you see another side of a story, and then you say, oh, that gives me something
to question. And we should all be questioning. You know, I don't understand what has happened in our schools or whatever, that we've not done a better job of questioning things, that we just take it all for granted and assume everything's right. And, you know, we have this internet, this wonderful, powerful internet where we can just do all this fact finding and deep digging, and yet we just, you know,
we assume.
We do.
Because my thing is this, is that there's so much information, it's a saturation of information. It's almost like it's too much. So how do you kind of go through?
Right, it's just easier, I guess, to, you know, assume and listen rather than to have to run out and do your research.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people need to start critically thinking. It's good to always, you know, refer to someone else, but at a certain point you have to say, wait a minute, I've got to actually do research on this. I can't assume this person's telling me the truth, because as much information is out there, there's disinformation.
Exactly.
And people are like, there's disinformation campaigns simply to confuse you, which successful.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at cannabis. I mean, marijuana. I mean, I'd love to do a case study on the way that the government was able to so beautifully orchestrate, you know, all the disinformation. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, I just read a story this week about a Nixon aide talking about, did we know, his quote was basically, did we know that we were damaging, you know, the reputation of that drug? Of course we did. Yeah.
How do you not?
Right. But they totally knew it. I mean, they knew all the healing benefits, and they just wanted to shove it down.
Eventually, the truth is always brought to light. With things like this, when you yourself can find this because of the Freedom of Information Act now, the Virginia study's been disclosed. And you see an intentional, once they actually, which is funny because the premise of the study was to prove how bad it was. It's actually great. The reason he wanted to do it was to prove, I'm not him, but to prove how bad it was on the system. When the results came back, it showed the polar opposite. It showed tumors shrinking in mice. It showed cell regeneration. And what did they do? They buried it. Well, that's intent. If you're burying something and you're like, well, let's not let this get out.
Right.
Now you have, after a disinformation campaign, you have truth. And you're prolonging that. So again, now that it's starting to come out, it's almost like a campaign to undo the damage of how are we going to now say we didn't know about this?
Exactly.
After so many years of intentionally covering it up.
Yeah, which I think is what they're grappling with, and that's why I think that the government's not sure how to proceed.
Yeah.
Because for so long,
they've downplayed plants, they've downplayed certain things, and there are other plants that do echinacea on a smaller scale also activates your endocannabinoid system. It strengthens the immune system. So I always invite people, look, opinions are great, but get out there as much as you can and critically think and do your fact finding. And this way come to the table with proof as much as you can get. This way you're not just being told something, because if you're always being told something, you're consuming the information, having no filter of what's right and what's wrong. I want to thank you for coming by today. It's always great to see you and talk to you.
Yeah.
Go out, get Elevate Magazine. Is it anywhere else besides Smith's?
You know what? It's in a lot of ancillary locations that you'll probably find around where you find news, little news racks.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've got it at coffee shops. I don't need coffee because I'm hyper. But check it out if you can. If it's not in your state, check it out online. What's that website again?
It's elevatenv.com.
I want to thank you again for coming by today.
Of course.
I want to thank the audience. And as always, stay safe, stay close to the Lord, and God bless. And we'll see you next time.